There we go.
We are live.
We are now live.
Link. Going to today's live broadcast.
Hey. Hi, everybody.
I'm judging those people. You're judging who people? Those three? You're judging us? Our own people?
They look like us. They look like us, but they're not us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's how this works.
Share to my timeline. How much of a delay are we on?
A little bit. Jeff's on here now. Hello, Jeff. Hello, Drew. Welcome. I'm going to try to actually look at the camera as opposed to looking at my laptop.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure you are.
Well, I'm going to try, or at least look at you guys. Not more.
This is the last of our setup. All right.
Okay, so you have the live chat going.
I have a live chat going. See? Voila! Ooh, it's very Inception.
Inception. So,
Insurrection or something like that.
insemination.
That too. Woo!
Insemination.
Yay! Are we ready to get this shit show going?
Sure. Let's go.
I have no sound. Drew says he has no sound. Why does he not have sound?
Oh, Lordy. Jesus Christ. Oh, good Lord. Hold on. He can't hear us at all.
Jeff, can you hear us? I'm putting into the chat. Can anyone hear us? Question mark.
The camera's working. We wouldn't be getting dots if it wasn't working. Hi.
Hello.
Jeff said he can hear us.
Okay.
No.
So maybe.
Well, then it's just Drew.
Then maybe it's just Drew. Sorry, Drew.
He would be streaming through his phone while driving. He is looking on the data plan, I think, but I don't know. Although this is, we only have one viewer.
Well, maybe George dropped off.
I don't know.
So there's audio. Yeah. Okay.
So we'll just keep going.
Sorry, Drew.
Drew, did you mute? Maybe.
I don't know what this one is.
That's going to be the onboard one.
Okay. Is it really quiet? Yeah, it's very quiet.
But that's the one we used before, wasn't it?
No, we were using a different one before.
I was using the webcam one.
I heard the webcam one cut out. Or can you hear us now? It's better? I'm making noise so that you can hear us. Okay, there we go. They can hear us now. Better?
We sound a little bit like we're in a fishbowl. I think is the issue.
The mic is on board.
So we'll do the
We're
best
on
we
track.
can.
We're going to
All right. We are dealing with a lot of technical difficulties. Please
Apparently.
stand by. Speaker? No, we don't need a speaker.
Yeah, just play the test sound and see where it comes from. You came out of the job room?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Change that to connections. Connects it. Doesn't go move that. There you go. And then hit save.
all right.
How about now? Anything? Yes?
Anything?
No?
No, maybe. How? Now.
I think I was about to type how about now, but that didn't come out that way.
So far. Okay, good.
So far what? So far yes?
Yes. Hey, Anthony. I don't know who you are, but hi.
Thank you, Anthony, for like giving us some,
Cool.
Kind of
All right.
feedback.
So we're going to keep going.
is it, so now the question becomes yes?
Yes. Hey, Anthony. I don't know who you
That's
are.
not too bad. Sounds better. Thank you, Anthony. All right.
Yeah. Take 5.
15, 16, something like that. Hike! All right.
Again.
So do we want to start the whole like shady over again? Never mind.
No.
Y'all missed the beginning. So like if you saw stuff but couldn't hear it, basically I accused this one of being shady to that one about bad foreplay. And I was wrong.
Yes. Yes, you were.
I got nothing. All right. So let's do this again. Welcome everybody to Cubs Out Loud, episode 431. It's an OTR, or what we call on the road show. Normally you see us and our little webcams from different places. Pennsylvania, Ohio, used to be North Dakota, now Ohio, and Jeffrey's in Texas. He's not with us today, at least not in the show. He's in the chat, I think, somewhere.
Yes. He's in
Hey, Jeff. So we are all in Cincinnati, or as I used to call it, but got chastised for, the Nasty, because apparently that's the disparaging version. So now they call it the Natty, which I'm like, so you drop the S.
Nasty was, I don't know. I'm not, I don't have any skin in the game. I just live here.
Yeah. So, or as Chester found out yesterday, its other nickname is
Porkopolis.
I was going to say Big Tucker. I don't know where that came from or why I was thinking that.
Big Tucky.
Pig Tucky. Wow, you made a whole new thing up. And it might take, who knows. Porkopolis is a reference to the fact that Cincinnati, in its history, used to be the pig capital of the country, or
Something
at least
like
the East Coast. It was at one time, prior to St. Louis, I believe, the gateway to the West. So
There you go.
please excuse me, I now have carbonation coming up. As people started to expand the country, at one point Cincinnati on the edge of Ohio into Indiana was kind of a gateway for river, train, I think, and other transportation modes. That being said, it is sort of our annual post-Labor Day, we're in the same place kind of thing-ish. So this weekend was Pride Night at Kings Island here in Cincinnati, Ohio, or technically Monroe?
Mason,
Ohio, which is part of Cincinnati, isn't it? Kind of. I mean, it's like, to me, it's kind of like a suburb, but I guess it's a separate city or township.
It always depends. I don't know anymore. There's literally a town called Norwood that is between, like you go, here's the city of Cincinnati, and then there's Norwood, which is actually its own city, and then you go past it, and you're back in the city. Whatever. I don't get it.
Yay, politics.
Zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, zoning is fun.
Yeah.
So we decided we were gonna. I thought we would call it amusement park fairs because all three of us were going to be here and we were all going to go to Kings Island. However, in the time of when we set that up, in reality, Mr. Chester got a job. So he was going through training when Damon and I and other folks went to Kings Island Pride Night. So he did not get to go to Kings Island with us, but he's heard lots of stories about what happened. Most of it was about the drag show because that's what we do, is go see drag and then talk about it afterwards. Yeah, one of them things. But we're probably going to do this topic again in the future, at least once or twice, because a certain podcast
Really, girl? You're gonna give me rabbit ears?
Would you rather have me stick my tongue right there next to your ear?
I don't know. Now, the problem I see, though, is that we're not gonna fit into frame. Possibly.
Well, we know there's sound. I think we might. If I look at the Chester. Whoa.
Hang on.
You are totally not naked right now, Chester. Oh.
Yeah, I finally caught up.
No, I want that one. Show.
Okay, you're doing something because it now got really yellow.
Hold on. What I want to do, though, is...
Ooh, right.
Super fucking bright.
Sorry, everybody. It's going to get ugly for a moment. Hang on. Let's go with this one. Let me know when the color looks okay.
Okay, hold on.
It's gonna get ugly for a moment. And then you see Gary's face.
Hey, it's the way it is.
Okay, that's a little better. That's actually a lot better.
But he's on delay, so I think he's not.
Yeah, I'm on delay too.
Whatever you have it on right now is fine.
Yeah.
Really?
It's a bit bright.
Now it's bright.
All right. No, see, that's what I wanted to know. I thought.
Well, you realize we're dealing with the
About
delay
3 seconds,
too.
about 10 seconds behind.
Oh, now you're really close.
Still too bright. Okay, let me go back to the settings. COL, which it's this one.
And now it's getting all inside.
Yeah, right there is fine. It's a bit sepia, but it'll work.
What I was trying to do though is. Oh, it's the zoom that I need. Hold on.
There we go.
That's what I was trying to do.
Just not go too far.
Done.
There you go.
Blink. Hang on. Let me.
Just a heads up, it's already 105.
Oh,
We'll talk really quickly. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Totally fine. Everything's fine here.
so they can hear
How are
us.
you?
We're good.
And
They can hear us. They can see us. They just can't touch us and feel us.
I put my pants back on.
Where did you put your pants? Your pants weren't. Okay.
all right.
Can you hear us? Can you see us? Yes. Yes. Myself.
I hope so.
What are you trying to?
Try and turn it that way slightly.
Better. I don't know if there's anyone else in the room.
Maybe they've all left.
No, there's two watching. Are you on it?
I'm on it.
And you're on it. So, you know what? Whatever.
Yeah, but how do we know if it's recording though?
It's broadcasting and it's here. I mean, I'm looking at it, and I'm on my account, not on the Cover a Lot account.
Okay.
So take 136.
Nice. Where are we picking up from? Just gonna hate editing this one for audio.
Yeah, whatever.
Porkopolis, Kentucky.
Oh yeah, Pig-tucky. Made a whole new wording thing out of that.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So anyways, we're all here in Cincinnati because at this time of year is Pride Night at Kings Island. The Friday after Labor Day is typically the night that it gets done. And part of that has to do with the fact that the summer season has ended for the amusement park. So the popularity of people being there diminishes, and I think they changed their park hours. That was one of the things we were discussing yesterday, some friends of mine and I. So this year, however, was the 20th year of Pride Night at Kings Island, and the Lesbian and Gay Center of Cincinnati has been the coordinator, fundraising benefactor for the event for 20 years. Rusty Lockett, who I think is originally from Cincinnati or Northern Kentucky near here, he has been part of the center on the board and involved, and he's done this event for I think 15 of the 20 years.
Yeah.
And the reason we're talking about the time frame, especially on the number of years, is because this was the last year.
Yeah.
And that wasn't discussed at length. Yes. So I bought the shirt this year. Ta-da! Although it doesn't say Kings Island or anything. Like,
What?
all it has is the date, Pride Night and like Pride Out. So, yeah. So they decided that they're going to stop doing it. Now, what I do want to talk about, though, is this discussion at the end of night about the possibility that this really isn't the very last Pride Night. And it makes sense when you hear about the logistics. So the center has had a contract with Cedar Fair, the parent company of Kings Island, for years on end. And another group has possibly stepped forward to take over Pride Night.
Okay.
In order to do that and to renegotiate the contract, you have to end a current contract.
Ah.
So, and I don't know if this is true. I'm going to fully admit this is all rumor if anybody hears this until it gets confirmed. My understanding is if the center wanted to step out of putting on the event and have someone else take over, you basically have to stop. Now, if this is true, then Cincinnati has a pride organization.
Yes.
That entity is what I was told wants to continue doing Pride Night.
Okay.
So to the lay public, Pride Night will continue. But I mean, it would make sense, especially if they just keep calling it Pride Night, especially if the Pride group or organization is putting it on. It just won't be the center or necessarily Rusty and that dedicated team of however many years doing the work.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see how that plays out. It also explains why they weren't majorly promoting that this is the last and final year.
Yeah.
So because I had heard rumor about it, and then I asked you, and you confirmed you had heard that. So I went to Rusty because we're friends in real life and online, and I said, hey, no offense, there's a rumor this is the last year. To which he replied, this is not a rumor. I was like, oh dear. So he spelled out to me and then to other friends and a little more publicly quite often 6 to 7 reasons specifically of why they were not going to do it anymore. We're not going to get into the discussion of that, but it makes sense when you start understanding the things they've had to deal with. So we don't know if this is the real last time the local community will be going to the amusement park as a private group at night. One of the interesting thing is, and I don't know if you remember this term from Jim, what they've been doing, I think, is called a buyout.
Yeah.
So a buyout of the park means you are exclusive as an audience. The only people there is your audience, like your group that attends and the workers. It's like my event at my run. We are the only ones in the water park. There they call it an after hours event because it's after public hours.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me, kind of the structure that as a buyout, they have very specific rules about what happens and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So if all of this comes together the way I think it is, the Pride organization is now going to take over the event, managing it, organizing it, and they will carry it forward. Now, whether they do a buyout, I don't know.
Yeah, there's been a lot of speculation, and once everything gets confirmed, and it probably won't get confirmed for a little while. I think they want people to like take a little time. You had your Pride night, you had your last one. Let's take a little time to figure out what we're going to do. It also may depend solely on cost effectiveness, because it's a buyout is not an easy thing to do. It really isn't, because you're depending on what the organization like Kings Island wants. It'll may mean like you're sitting down this large amount of money, and then like that's how like a big like business or company would do. They would sit a whole bunch of money down, and that's basically to pay for the park and using the rides and everything else, and then you have it for so many hours. Whereas one of the issues has been that Pride Night has been doing individual tickets, and you have to buy your own tickets, etc. But I don't know. I hope that I would love for it to continue in some capacity. If it's the same capacity as in it's a like buying out the park for an evening and everyone going and everything else like it has been, great. If it's an organized quote unquote takeover of the bar, like where like gay days and stuff like that, where they actually just everyone goes and they're wearing like the same color shirts,
where it's not sanctioned by the park itself.
Yeah.
Everybody it's kind of like guerrilla.
Well, I think so. The thing that's a little confusing for folks is I think a lot of people presume that Cedar Fair and Kings Island put on the event, meaning like they're okay with it, they support it and all that. I think they do to a point. There's been discussions like kind of between people about the parent company being conservative politically and that they may not be supportive of the community. And it's funny because then I think people would say, well, then why do they allow this to happen? And I think the answer is money is money.
True that.
You know, so if they want the money, they'll take the contract. So I think knowing that the ticket piece is a part of the situation, I can see where the park says you paid X amount, you bought out the whole place. The fact that that the organizing also requires them to handle tickets, I can see as like another layer. And from the park's perspective, it's like more work to be done because you've already paid, let's say $50,000. You bought out the park, like, so tickets make no sense in a buyout, but they do as an organizer because you need a way to like control the traffic, the flow. Plus, the only people that can get in are the people that have tickets. So that makes things, you know, a kind of challenge. Like my event, we do wristbands. So there's a certain amount of wristbands and there's a head count, and then we get charged based off of that. Not sure what that was. There's a ghost in the house apparently. So Jeff says he can see and hear us now, doesn't realize we're back. Yay, we're back. And we've been chatting for a little bit. So rewind, catch up, I don't know. What we're talking about is the amusement park aspect of it, and that this is supposed to be the last year for the event. But there's a possibility that this isn't the last year as an event in general. I think. Okay. We're just gonna leave that alone. We'll come back to that mess later. So I feel bad because, you know, I was telling people, like in our group chat for discount tickets and stuff, I was like, hey, just so you know, there's a rumor going around, this is the last year, and it's been confirmed, it is the last year. And then at the end of the night, people who know people, so this is all like third, fourth party, came forward with this concept of, it won't be the end of Pride Night at the park, it's more the end of who is putting it on, who's organizing it. And I kind of understand why it's a little weird to talk about that, because to the lay person, they don't care. You know what I mean? Like, I think most people that go to the amusement park, they just want to go.
Yeah.
So I don't think they give a shit about who's working it, because they're not invested in who's working it, you know what I mean, or who's volunteering or making the magic happen. They just show up.
Yeah.
So I can understand why some people would be like, man, like, you know, all right, so a different entity's in charge, and to them maybe it's more politics and they don't care
That could be also
that
the
it's
case.
going from one nonprofit to another nonprofit. At least I hope the Pride Group's a nonprofit, maybe in Cincinnati. So
Again, I don't invest in those kind of things really.
Right.
Like I'm one of those people like, oh, it's being put on. That's all that really matters to me.
right. So it brings up a good point about like we went. And Chester, you've gone to a lot of parks, and like I think people go because they want to have the fun factor, and the organizing aspect or whatever really doesn't ever come to mind. Because you're like, I'm just there because my friends are there. I want to ride rides. I want to eat bad food. Like, you know, I want to cruise people, whatever it is. You know, and you want to have fun, but there's work that goes on in behind the scenes kind of stuff. I think taking over parks, buying out parks, that kind of stuff, or the guerrilla style, like going to a park, that's about like having a presence and being known. But it's interesting because I was talking to someone, we were talking about there's less and less bars. And I was trying to help them understand. People were like, oh, well, they blame that apps are the reason why there's less gay bars. And I'm like, yes and no. The reality is we've moved forward as a society for the, you know, equality, diversity, acceptance issues. So a gay bar is no longer required as a safe space.
Right.
So it makes me wonder if amusement park events are also going to start to become less and less because we don't need our own space. Like we don't need our own event to come together. We can just go any day.
Sure.
I don't know if that will be the case or not.
I think we can still go any day that we want, but we just can't go as a group and be comfortable going as a group.
But do people not feel comfortable going though right now? Like
I've never known anybody to say, oh, I'm not going to go to Cedar Point because I don't want people gay bashing me. I've never heard of anything like that.
True. I think what the potential issue could be is that whether or not, because for me, when I go to Friday night, I tend to go because I know I feel not necessarily that it's a safe space, but I feel that I will be a lot more comfortable seeing gay, GLBT people around and enjoying themselves and having fun, as opposed to not necessarily hiding or hiding kind of a thing. Because you can see plenty of gays and whatever, at amusement parks and what have you. They're going to be there because we're all, there. But
well, look at it this way. Yesterday, the three of us, plus Evan and Drew, we went to the Rheingeist Brewery.
Oh, that's right.
We were all wearing our Cubs Out Loud shirt. Did it bother you that people may have seen us and said, I wonder if they're all gay? I never got that. I never had any kind of feeling that people were judging us or looking at us differently, other than the fact that those guys all have the same shirt on. Yeah. Until we were in the store yesterday, and the one guy stopped us in the aisle, and he's like, do you guys know each other? I realized he was joking.
Right.
But then he also made it after I said, no, we don't know each other at all. And then he's like, there's something about you. And when he said that, I was like, I wonder if he realizes we're gay. And then he's like, I got it. You're all wearing beards. And then I turned around and I said, no, we're just all fat.
Which seemed to confuse him slightly in that moment. I thought, why is that confusing him? But anyways.
So it was one. That's kind of funny. Sorry, I don't think I heard that, but
So you weren't there.
Yeah.
What happened was yesterday, just so everybody knows, because we come down to Cincinnati for Kings Island for Pride Night on Friday night, some of us, when we do, is we make a weekend of it. So Evan and Chester came in. They stayed here at Damon's. Drew and I came in. We stayed with our friends Jeff and Ronnie. A lot of people were at the park on Friday night, but then they do other things on Saturday. Like we ran into Kevin and Hal, or at least I did, at the brewery yesterday. No idea that they were going to go there. I knew they had been at the park the previous night, even though I didn't see them. And that's the other thing is, this year was an all-time record-setting attendance. I believe Rusty listed it was about around or over 3,400 people that went to the park. So in 20 years, that's the most they've ever had turnout, which is great.
Nice.
I'm glad to see that, that happened again, because it's been a couple of years since they've had record-breaking attendance. But it's so, there's so many people, you may not see each other. I have a friend from Columbus that was there. I never saw him the whole time. Didn't even know he was there.
I never saw there were so many people
Well, no, him I saw because I gave him his ticket.
Yeah,
but
that
was a different friend. But yeah, it's difficult to see folks, and so we extended the weekend. And then because we knew we were going to be here and recording this, I had this idea amongst us as co-hosts. We've bought, some of the different apparel through our Zazzle.com/CubsOutLoud store. Bing! You're welcome, Jeff. So we had our different shirts. We're not wearing them today because, no offense, we wore them all day yesterday.
Yeah.
So, and then Chester took a couple of pictures. You might see some of them show up later of us. So we just kept them on throughout the course of the day. And we made the joke about some people might think we're part of a softball team or something of that sort. So I don't know if when we went to the brewery and then we went to Jungle Jim's or the grocery store, if people kind of figured it out or wondered.
Yeah.
I mean, no one, don't take wrong to this, no one was able to finally say, oh, are you all brothers? Because we have one of us who people can't confuse with the others easily. Like, I will own this. People talk about people of color looking alike. It happens on the other end when no offense, when you're a fat, white, hairy homosexual and you're next to other ones and people go, oh, are you guys brothers? And you're looking at each other like, we don't look that much alike.
I have a feeling it's because when people see that, it is because their mind snaps.
They have to make a connection.
They have to make a connection. They know that you guys are together somehow, but they just don't want to face the truth that, oh, they are probably a couple
or something like that. Yeah,
or it just may not be their frame of mind. I get with you that, like, I gotta put them in a box. Like, I need a label. I need a construct to know who and what they are. But I think what happens a lot of times is it's not in their wheelhouse. Like, it's just not in their experience. Like, I was talking this weekend about my parents had asked me, my mom, within about a year and a half ago, we had this conversation. She said, why did you think you couldn't come out when you were younger? Because I didn't come out until college, and I struggled with it, and they both felt like, what did we do wrong as parents that you couldn't have come out when you knew? And I told them, I don't think you did anything wrong, but what I finally realized in my 40s now is that neither of my parents had gay friends. There were no gay men in my younger life that were friends of theirs that I ever saw.
That you could see that they were okay with it.
Right, or that could talk to me if I needed help. Like, I had none of that context. So mine was nearly 100% social driven, because we weren't really a religious family. Like, we didn't go to church or house of worship. So they're surprised to hear that I talk about how faith like told me I was going to be, going to hell and all this kind of stuff. And so it's interesting, because I think if you just don't have it in your bubble, you don't see it. And I think that's what happens to other people, is if they don't have
something, a reference.
Like hairy homosexuals in their lives, like they don't recognize, oh, this might be a gay man with another gay man. I mean, like they just be like, oh, these kind of look like more modern Amish dudes or something.
It was very funny because one of the fun things for me about yesterday was, so what was going on at Ryan Guys was something we didn't expect or know about. It was a festival. They're celebrating their new beer, Franz, which was their beer for their Oktoberfest, which is coming up actually next weekend. So, so they're having this big kind of festival at the event.
Carnival Festival.
Yeah, Carnival Festival. They were playing cornhole. If you saw us on Comes Out Loud with the video of cornhole is a beanbag game. It is not. So, are the worst part of it. So yeah, but I happened to run into two friends of mine from college who I knew lived here, but I haven't really had an opportunity to see in the 14, 15 years I've lived here. So it was just random occurrence that they happened to be there, and they saw us and saw our shirts, and they all knew we were there together. They know me. So we just had a really cool kind of conversation about what they were doing, what they've been up to, and they asked about Comes Out Loud because they saw the shirts. And the husband actually started a gay straight alliance in his high school. He works for a high school. And he was actually, is Comes Out Loud age appropriate? And I kind of went, no.
Well, it can, but it can't be.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you talk about that he has this GSLA thing that he's working on, which, by the way, your friend is handsome. I mean, I'm not saying that I, want to steal him from his wife. It's just when we were at the bar, at that part of the building, you and Chester and Evan were standing behind me. Drew and I were at the bar, and then in a moment, like you guys were sort of gone. You had been taking pictures, and then you were no longer to my right. And that was when the bartender, the woman, said, "What Comes Out Loud?" And I said, "Oh, it's a podcast." And I turned around and I said, I'm like, we co-host. And I think you were still standing there at the moment. And I turned and I went and I had to find you in the crowd.
You were, because he was standing like behind you.
Right. I was like directly behind me. So I had to kind of go like this. And I was like, oh, I'm like, he in the red shirt. I was like, and then, we're all co-hosts and like, these are friends of ours. But I noticed you were engaged in this conversation with this couple. And I was like, who's the dude and the girl like that Damon's like really engaged with? And at first I thought, oh, that's really great that Damon, is just randomly talking to people. Because I thought like maybe they asked you a question and you just dove right in.
I just assumed that they were your coworkers.
Oh, see, and then later you were like, oh, I ran into people I know. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Not that you always have to do that.
Yeah.
But to me, it was so random. I just presumed they just started talking to you, like, hey, what's up the shirt?
Considering,
Well, I was standing somewhat nearby when you saw them or they saw you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guy saw me first.
Right, and it was just the way that you guys were interacting. I was like, oh, they must be colleagues or know each other from somewhere.
Yeah.
It was easy for me to kind of connect the dots. We're in Cincinnati. You live and work in Cincinnati.
Right.
So you must know them somehow.
Somehow.
So, yeah, it's interesting because we did do travel around yesterday. So we did the brewery stop and got to have beer, played cornhole, and then went grocery shopping. And then after that, went dropped groceries off, and then got back together and went to dinner. But during those 2 outings, we were all wearing different versions of the same logo shirt.
And it definitely got people like looking. So if suddenly things like web, links or web browsers or looks go up, that might.
Well, I know the tour guide at the beer place is the first one to say something to us. In the middle of his spiel, he turns to us. He's like, "I really like your guys' shirts," and then went back to talking.
Yes.
Which did make it awkward because I was like, I wanted to talk to him, but it's like now, like,
yeah,
you're in the middle of giving like the explanation. It was very non sequitur. Like it was just like it was like a, and then he went to go back, and I thought, but we could talk about like why we're wearing it, and now we kind of are like, well, now we're in a spotlight because you did it in front of the whole group,
right?
And the other part is, folks don't know, we arrived late for the tour. We got to the brewery relatively on time, but then there was no street parking to be found for a couple blocks. So we drive around, we find a spot, we get out, we go in, and then unbeknownst to us, we went in the exit because it's not clearly marked when you first walk in the building. You're supposed to go left and then up those steps, not right and up the other steps. So we dump out into the big hall, and we're like, oh, all right.
Where do we go?
So right, we're trying to figure out where to go, and the first thing we spot is this woman walking past in their blue worker shirts, and I didn't know at first they all had the same thing. They have a name patch and it says Franz. Well, I thought like all of them have different patches with different names, and it's cutesy. Like maybe her name is Frances, but here she goes by Franz. So I was like, hey, Franz. She kind of stops, and I was like, first of all, great shirt. She's like, thanks. And I said, we're here for the tour, but we're a couple minutes late. It's like 6 after. Like, do you know where they're at? She's like, yeah, they were here. The big group that just literally passed you is them. And she's like, they're headed over there. So all of a sudden we're like, so we go to run over. And so I'm like, hey, sorry, we're late. Like, we had a thing with the parking. Is it okay if we join the tour? We know you have like a head count limit or cap. And he's like, no, it's good. So like we come in. So I'm feeling awkward because we're late. We're all dressed in the same like kind of shirt style. We walk in, everybody else on the tour has a beer. We don't have a beer. So we're going to do a beer tour without even having any beer yet with us, which isn't bad, but it set this whole thing. But I knew we were probably going to be okay because the woman that I stopped is wearing their logo Rheingeist shirt, but it's the Pride colors. It's definitively a gay like version of their label. So I was like, damn, like that's awesome. And then come to find out, it is only available during Pride. You cannot get it any other time of year. They don't have any on hand. No stickers, no labels, no shirts, no nothing, because that was June.
Yeah.
It's now September. Damn it.
I have a feeling that particular employee who was wearing that shirt, well, I would assume any employee who wears that shirt has to get that question a lot. I love your shirt. Where can I buy it?
Right.
Because as soon as I said that, she immediately was like, it's only available during Pride.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that sucks.
And then when we stopped at the shop towards the end, when you guys went over to start looking at playing cornhole, Drew and I were looking at the stuff at the shop. And luckily, the one label that we were interested in, they have probably 30 or 40 different kinds of beers, and a good portion are seasonal. And at the end of this month, they're releasing Dad. That's literally the name, DAD, and it has a plaid like pattern, and it's their holiday special. So going into the holiday season, they come out with that. Well, the only thing that has that is a glass. And Drew and I had been talking about like the different names and some of the stuff, and we thought the Dad was cute to make us something as part of like a gift basket for like a thing. Yeah. So he's been on this thing all year. Like when we see little things like stuff that is, has to do with like masculine archetype things, like, oh, that would be fun. Like if it's a candle or like coffee or just anything. And then you could kind of mix and match pieces and eventually make different types of baskets. So we were joking about like making a daddy basket, and like, so how fun would it be if you had this glass of the label to the beer and with a 6-pack of beer, but the beer's not available yet. So it's a little interesting that the glass was already available. I think it might be left over from last year, but like all the Pride stuff, nothing. And the girl at the booth, the shop, I said, you don't happen to have anything with the Pride, the rainbow? And she goes, no. She goes, in fact, a lot of us here want it, and we started after that event or like that time. She's like, and now like we all have to wait. Like we can't even, like they're not gonna put an order in for the staff or whatever.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, and then I asked her, I said, will it be available online or only in site? Because I'm already preparing. I'm like, I'm pointing to you because you live here. So I'm like,
You're gonna have a big order.
well, no, it's like if we know that it's coming up and it isn't available online, then we might have to like ask you to do some reconnaissance and like either call
Just go
or
pick up 20 of them.
well, you know, and say, hey, like, is it only available in store? And maybe if they do pre-order or something, because if you know you're going to have like 6, 8 people or whatever that all want to get the shirt, then that way we can work with them and make sure that, you know, folks that want it can get it or whatever it is.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. And we like the beer that they had.
Yeah, it was
I know.
good. It was a good beer. It was a good day of drinking.
I'm not a beer drinker, but I did go up to the bar and ask them, hey, do you guys offer samples? Because I will taste different things. And she's like, oh yeah, what would you like to try? And then I've got this huge board of like 20 different flavors. And I'm just like, okay, well, give me this one and this one and this one. And I finally did, I did mention to her that I don't care for beer. And she's like, oh, well, that's okay. We have cider. Okay, well, let me try the ciders too.
Yeah. So that was part of the reason I think you guys decided to go. Drew had brought up that he wanted to go. I was fine with going. I'm not a big beer drinker, but meaning, you know, it's not something I drink often. I'm probably more like wine or spirits. What's that?
We went to Eden Park that morning.
Oh, okay.
Like that's where. So Chester and Evan and I got up yesterday to go have lunch, and then we were done with lunch, and then you were like, "Oh, we're going to do the door tour at 2." And I was like, "Okay, well, we'll just. What are we going to do for like 2 hours? Because we were done about noon." So I was like, "Oh, well, why don't we just go?" He was like, "Do you want to do any sight?" Or Evan would love to do some sightseeing, so we just drove through. So we went to Eden Park. I didn't realize that you guys were thinking we were going to be heading from lunch to
The brewery.
no, yeah, to your place, to
Oh,
Jack
yeah.
and then to go out. And I was like, shit. Well, because you messaged me like, are you guys here yet? Like, I thought you guys were going to be here by now.
Right. Well, because we were like, maybe we'll just carpool together in one vehicle instead of all that kind of stuff. But
Which
Um,
was a great idea.
yeah, so we ended up going there, and like when I talked to you about the idea, I was like, hey, this is what Drew and I are thinking about doing. Do you want to join in? And you were like, well, I'm not much of a beer drinker, but Evan, you know, likes beer. And I said, well, I know that they have cider, because that was one of the things that Drew had mentioned. He's reading through what they make, and he's like, they make ciders, and I'm like, oh, good. Like, and a lot of breweries do now. A lot of unless they're a distillery or a winery, and even then, like wineries will make juices.
Right.
Like juice blends, like everyone's realizing not everyone drinks and not everyone likes whatever that is.
Yes, I still want to try your product, but I want to enjoy what I'm trying.
Right.
I can't expect every place to do that.
Yeah.
The only thing that hasn't completely made a resurgence yet is sodas or like soda pops. During Prohibition, nearly all breweries that like stayed in business switched all of their bottling lines completely from making beer to making soda pop.
Huh.
So
I'm curious about that. I know Sprecher does. Sprecher does soda and beer.
Right.
But I don't know about any other company.
Well, right. So a lot of when Prohibition ended, a lot of breweries went back to making beer and just kind of stopped the soda unless it really was a significant like, you know, success or whatever. Sprecher is one of the better known ones that like stayed on with that kind of stuff. So some breweries have both available. They have canned and or bottled sodas as well as the beer. Some of them make a near beer or a non-alcoholic. You know, everyone's kind of playing and dabbling at whatever works. And so Rheingeist in particular here in Cincinnati has the 2 or 3 ciders that they make that continue. So that way you have, but interestingly, everything is alcoholic. Like they even have a ginger ale, and we tried it, but Drew and I were in agreement. Well, at least I didn't care for. I love ginger ale, but I told him I was like, no, it's too bitter because it's made like a
Right. Oh, that one. Yeah.
So I was excited a little bit for a moment that they had a ginger ale, but it's a true ginger ale. Like
right.
it's a beer that has ginger in
beer.
it. Right.
No.
See, that's the thing that's confusing is there's ginger, what we call ginger ale or ginger soda pop. And then you can have ginger beer, which most ginger beers don't have alcohol in them.
Okay.
And then there are ginger beers with alcohol.
Okay.
Right. And then what they made
And then there's
was
ginger mint.
Nice. And then there's ginger minge. And then there's, you know, like they made an ale, but they call it a ginger ale because ginger's the flavor. But it's very problematic because if you think of like Canada Dry, Schweppes or whatever, and you go to drink this, that is not it.
No,
And that was it. I took a sip from the sample and I made a face and Drew goes, yeah. Like he didn't order it either, but they use a little of hops in the process, as we learned yesterday on our tour. That's what helps add the bitter like profile. And I was like, no, it's too, like, even though it's low on bitter, it's still too whatever. So that's close to making a soda, but it's not. So I don't know if I think they're pretty successful, so they're probably not caring about making that.
Yeah.
Right now, but
Rhinegeist has been pretty successful. They've done a lot. I've heard more about them in the past couple of years than I had ever prior to now.
Right.
And they're just growing and expanding. And what we obviously heard on the tour was that they're very much very not family driven, but they're very much like we have a lot of employees and we treat them really well and we're doing a lot of stuff and
right. And the guy said they're up to like 200 employees now. So if you want to apply mathematics and if you work off the standard that 10% of the population is LGBT, that means they've got 20 employees that are, so to speak, part of the community.
in some capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
So then that makes sense why they had the shirt, you know, and they probably, and who knows, I mean, maybe next year during Cincinnati's Pride, Rhinegeist might, you know, have a booth or
I think they did.
or their beer might be sold at the beer tent if there is such a thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, so it makes sense along those lines. What would be cool, I just realized, is if Rhinegeist was somehow tied into other Pride stuff, like what we talked about earlier in the show was about how the center is no longer going to be putting on Pride Night. There's a rumor or a possibility that the Pride organization will take over organizing that. What would be cool, but I don't know the logistics, is if the night, the entity, event, whatever, could serve Rhinegeist, you know what I mean, as a tie-in, as part of a sponsor. I don't think that's possible though, because from what I've been understanding is the hands are kind of tied on what can be done within the event because of sponsorship deals and that kind of stuff with the
I imagine
parent
because
company
it's
that.
being held at Cedar Fair and Cedar Fair already has sponsorship from other vendors. That would be conflict of
You have to be
interest.
careful with the conflict of interest.
Right, because there's a brand of beer, I don't know if I want to say their name, because I don't want to give them buzz marketing, that's big on property. And I was annoyed only because I used to drink this beer and then the owner is very conservative and was supportive of who became number 45. And I was like, really? Like, and a lot of people in the, you know, gay, lesbian, you know, bigger community had a shit fit because they were like, well, guess I'm not drinking that anymore. And so I feel bad because they're pretty well known and ubiquitous. It's also America's oldest brewery. So it's like, really? Like, so.
And then you have to take into consideration that their contract with the park isn't year to year. It's, you know, like 5-10 year contracts.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they'll be around for a while.
Yeah.
So even if the park decided, you know what, we don't want your services anymore, they have to still honor
You'll have
their
the contract until it ends.
Or pay whatever the
or
penalty
pay it
is.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, to stop that.
So again, it all comes down to money.
I mean, people have approached and said to my event, like we do the beer tour, we do the winery tour, and people have said, why don't you have local craft beer or the local wineries? Like, why isn't their stuff highlighted as a part of your event? It can be done, but that's a whole other, I mean, we need a committee member or whatever to like kind of coordinate and handle that with the host facility to be like, hey, we want XYZ companies or company to be like represented and involved. And what happens is if they don't have exclusive contracts, you can make it work, but then there's all these layers about product, how's it going to be supplied, paying for it. In this case, because it's not necessarily something they carry, you'll probably be charged what's called corkage fees, which is like we could pay for it ourselves. Like I might be able to get a deal. So I might be able to, let's say, approach a local, brew pub or microbrew and say, hey, we want your beer at our event. And they'd be, that's great, not a problem. And I might be able to work out a discount on kegs. But because it's not a standard there and it's going to come in, the hotel's okay with it. But now I'm going to pay a surcharge because they're going to be pouring and supplying under their liquor license. And people don't see, that's what I mean when I started earlier in our conversation about people don't know the background, the inner workings. They just want to go, they just want to have fun. They don't give a shit about who has to put all the effort in.
Yeah.
And we're unique because we know people that put on events and put in the effort. So like when it got to be the end of the night of the drag show at Kings Island, Rusty was up on stage and he's, you know, the person that's, you know, the front man basically, and puts in a lot of effort. And he was trying to remember who to thank for all the stuff that was happening. And it was funny because Tyrese, who's the MC, the hostess, as the drag queen, she, you know, called out the previous,
Queens,
the previous entertainers of the night to line up. And then she asked Rusty to come up because obviously, you know, recognizing and thanking him. And a decent number of people, I'm not gonna say 100%, but probably looking maybe 80 to 85%, I don't know if you were there at that moment, stood up and applauded Rusty. Well, if you know that he's been working this fucking event for 15 years and he's stepping down, like this is the end, not just him, but, you know, of it, it's like, you know, we're trying to give the recognition to the people that, you know, labored to make that happen. So I'll be curious to see kind of where that comes out.
Pride night.
Yeah, in the future, because to go back also, another callback to what I said earlier is, let's say that like they take a year off.
Yeah.
It ends, quote unquote. Then like what else is left? Because it's a long story. My ex-stepmom Carol said about, well, what doesn't Cedar Park do a gay day? Which amused me because she didn't know Cedar Fair owns Cedar Point. And so, right. And I said, well, they don't have an official day. I'm like, but they do it on Father's Day. And I was trying to explain the concept. I'm like, it's a little bit of a spin-off to Gay Day at Walt Disney World or Disneyland, where you wear red shirts on a specific day. I'm like, but you go into the park. I'm like, but the park doesn't endorse it. Like they don't advertise it. They don't promote it. It's just more people show up.
Yeah.
And I think that's what some people now find more confusing is like, why do you do it that way? Like, why? Because I think in some ways they're like, well, if we have marriage equality, you know, and this kind of stuff, why aren't you just having a day? You know, like what, like if it's okay and it's acceptable, why aren't these businesses working with the community to promote like, or to have a thing? And it's like, yeah, that's not always the case. Like, you know,
there's a lot of inner workings that sometimes need to go with stuff like this. It can't just happen. Like it doesn't just like, you know, even if you're doing something along the lines of like a gay days where you're kind of invading the park, you need to get word out. You need to get people to show up. You know, if like, oh, we're going to do gay days and 5 people show up in red shirts, then it's not, what is the impact there? I mean, maybe it's even worse because it's such a small group of people. But
well, it ties to something I have a question about. You went a week ago, Thursday and Friday, to Cedar Point, and Friday was Pups at the Park.
Yeah.
But Pups at the Park wasn't an event per se.
No, it's just something that I put on myself, and I invite other puppies to join us at the park.
Right, and when you went, you guys didn't wear your hoods.
No.
In the park.
Although we had them, we just never wore them.
Okay. I'm curious though, I think the park would have made you not wear them.
Probably.
Yes. Because most parks have issues about costuming and masks, like that you're not a part of.
That was
whatever.
So I was part of a chat group, Miami Valley Pups and Handlers, which is out of Dayton. And they were talking about wanting to, you know, let's get on a ride and wear pup hoods and do the ride and all this stuff. And it sounds like a really great idea in theory. And then one person happened to like look at Kings Island's website and realized they have a policy about masks. Yeah. And he posted like a quick screenshot of it, which pretty much says no. Yeah. And it was like, oh, okay, well, it makes sense because reality is it's a safety issue. It always has been a safety issue. And I understand that because Kings Island, for example, has Halloween Haunt. They do it in October for Halloween. And they have one of the reasons they have the policy there is because they don't want people in masks at the park at night running around. You don't really recognize people. You can paint your face. You can always paint your face, but you cannot wear an actual mask that covers your face.
Or a costume to look like a character. You have to look like a civilian.
Yeah.
a lot of parks do that during the Halloween haunt stuff. And so I think that's what's hard is that's the part I was curious about. I was like, oh, Chester, like, and I didn't know you were organizing. I thought the pup community in like Michigan, Ohio, or whatever had like, you know, kind of coalesced and was like, I want to go to the park. And like all of a sudden it just kind of turned into a
No,
thing.
it's something I started a couple years ago because I had not been. Cedar Point's my favorite amusement park to go to, and I hadn't been there for several years. And I asked puppy friends of mine in the Cleveland area, would you guys go to the park with me? We could just make it a puppy at the park day. And that's kind of where it started. And then I was going to do one last year, but I missed it because of school. And then this year I decided, you know what, I'm going to do it again. We only had 6 people go.
Yeah.
But we went there specifically because we're all puppies. We're going to spend the day at the park together.
It can be a lot of fun. And that was one of the things I really did enjoy about the weekend. I think most people do. Like you came from Pittsburgh, you came from Columbus. You know, people actually come from good distances away just to come to the Pride Night event. And I think that has a lot to show for what it has done and how big the it has been promoted and what have you. But also, it shows that people like to go to things specifically for their orientation, as it were. I went when I first moved here. I went it was first year. So I went in 2003, which was I was here 2002. I moved here 2002 and I went in 2003. And I actually had friends coming from Kentucky, and that's how I went. And every year since then, I've usually gone with friends in Louisville. I've gone from friends in Lexington. You know, Brady was there. Hi, Brady. David Dulwood, who's been on the show. What's there? There are plenty of other people there. I mean, there were a bunch of people there, obviously, but just I know I saw a lot of like groups, like friends or, you know, people who just kind of hang out together, going out and going to the park. And I think that was one of the things I really enjoyed was that you weren't really, there wasn't really a whole lot of people that were just there by themselves.
Right. I think the interesting thing about the event that hasn't been done yet is I forget what it's called, a financial impacts, like an economic impact report about like what people are doing. I don't know if the center could do this or if, let's say Pride Night continues, if the Pride organization or whoever puts it on, if they were to do this, they could really show the importance of having this type of an event, because you're right. Like Drew comes in from Northern Ohio. I come from Pennsylvania. A whole bunch of people came from Kentucky, other parts of Ohio, Indiana. So if you take that and kind of, you know, do some computations on data and do a small survey, you know, be like, what's the mileage distance you came from? And then ask other questions like, did you spend any money in the area, such as a hotel for overnight stay, gas, a restaurant? Like, did you buy anything in the area outside of the park? Then you could make that as that impact kind of bubble thing and say, look, this solo one-time, one-night event didn't bring just in, you know, like roughly $40 per person for park admission. It brought in, on average, $30 per person to the area, or $50 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, so let's say, you know, it's $100 per person, and if 3,400 people went to the park, you know, it could be, you know, roughly $15,000, $20,000 of an economic impact just by simply having an event because of the folks that come there. But people don't think necessarily of those things. And so, you know, some events are really good about that. Like I think Claw recognizes their impact in Cleveland, and weren't they given a year ago, like recognition by the city as like one of the longest standing impact events, you know, in the area. But the only way that probably happened is because someone told the city, like, hey, we've been doing this event for 15, 16 freaking years. Here's the number of people that have attended over all those years. And someone probably did the math, like just said, rough estimates, like there's nothing exact. Every person paid a minimum of $100 to attend the event. And then they paid for hotels. Like they might have the data on that, like how many nights were actually paid for those years. And then turn around and say to the city, we've brought $5 million in like over 15 years or whatever. And then on top of it, we've raised all this money for charity. And then the city might be like, oh shit, like, you know,
So yeah, earlier you mentioned something about the individual parks sponsoring these,
Mhm.
and I know I've mentioned several times that Gay Days at Disney is not sponsored by Disney.
Yeah.
They don't want to put their foot into it, but they're incredibly aware that it happens.
Yeah.
All of their employees know. They warn their employees ahead of time. By the way, attendance is going to increase. Marketing puts things out that have rainbow colors on them, and they move them close to the registers. When you go up to a register, you see a little pin display. It's all the rainbow ones. It's all the ones that are sparkled or whatever. Disney is.
It's all the pretty ones.
It's all.
Ooh, did you stone that pin?
Disney is fully aware that this happens, and in fact, this past year was the first time that Walt Disney World had put out a T-shirt with a message on it promoting gay love. It was their T-shirt that said "Love is love."
Oh.
They actually did that?
Yeah.
Oh, I saw a lot of those shirts, but I saw them online and I didn't see them officially from Disney.
No, I wouldn't. I found one of them in the store and I checked the tag, and it is branded Disney.
Well, but the only Disney products can be sold in Disney stores, though.
Correct.
So I didn't know on a property any of that was there. I saw a lot of online stuff, and that's what's kind of irking me. Like, I don't know if you guys saw the thread about the Snoopy post. So like, there's a Charles Schultz like Snoopy, and it's got a pride message to it. And my comment was, because it was an ad in my
Do you
Facebook
really
feed.
think that?
Right. Do you
The
think
Schultz
that
family
the Schultz estate approved of this? And some people didn't understand where I was coming from. They thought like I was trying to say that the Schultz estate wouldn't be approving of the community. And I'm like, no, that's not, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
He created this. It is his legacy. It's his artwork. And you and I kind of talked about this, like as a photographer and other artists and stuff, you make things, but then your shit kind of gets stolen. Like people take it and they repost it, they reblog it, or they turn it into a product. Mm-hmm. So like, not to pick on it, but your shirt, we don't know if all of those entities for licensing approved of that being made. Some care, some don't.
Yeah.
Like I was just discussing this, I think this weekend, about like Star Trek versus Star Wars. Star Trek has been very litigious. Mm-hmm. They get super bitchy about people making things with their like iconography, like all the rest of that
inspired by them, yeah.
Right. But Star Wars, on the other hand, Lucasfilm figured out years ago, let the fandom have their fun. There is official merchandise, and then there's all the other stuff. So it's like, so you'll see mashup things of like, this is probably doesn't exist, I think, like Papa Smurf as Obi-Wan. Like, they don't care about that because they're like, it helps promote us and it gives a flavor of a community sense to the fandom. And that's the one thing I've talked about, as I said, that's kind of a notable difference about Star Trek versus Star Wars fans, is that Star Trek fans tend to be very devout to it. And like, there's a thing about like, I don't want to say it's austere or whatever, but there's kind of a different handling. And I think part of that comes from CBS, like, and, the parent companies, like how they handle stuff. So that's one of the things we were discussing is like, it was last weekend when I was in Pittsburgh, because Heather's always been into Star Trek. She said, what's shitty is the new Discovery show's coming out. And because they were in production and making things, all of a sudden, these websites and different things started getting some cease and desist letters and these other things because they're about to put out a whole new genre bubble, wave of things that relate to the universe based on this new television show. And no offense, they're kind of pissing people off because they're like, look, so what? Like, we have a fan-made movie. You're going to sue us and make us remove all the Star Trek references because it's not official? It's like, yet, despite the fact that we got, like, stars from the original series, much older now, to be in it, like, playing their previous, like, and that's what's crappy about it, is that Roddenberry, the family company, Rod, who's the son of Gene, he's fine with that stuff. He's like, I didn't get it for a long time. He's like, he has a podcast I listen to a little bit too. He's like, I get that, I had problems with my father and all stuff. He's like, I've matured. He's like, and I've gone to a couple of cons and I get it. He's like, these people are really passionate about something that my father made because they believe in the vision. He's like, who am I to kind of basically shit on it? Like, basically, like we've said many times, like, why would he yuck their yum? It's like, they're not bastardizing it. Like, they're not using it to make war or to cause problems, they're, in love with it. So his perspective is, I don't care, but he doesn't own it. His family doesn't own the rights. He can't, so he can only kind of voice a small opinion, and then everyone else is left to do whatever. And that's what I think is unfortunate about all of these things is, how does that stuff work out for people, what they want to do, where they want to go.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to the amusement parks, when that stuff happens, I'm always like, oh, that's really cool. And like, I want that shirt, but then I'm like, and then I pause and I'm like, yeah, but if it's not official, like, it's kind of crappy that someone else obviously is not only going to make the buck, but like it could be part of a problem, if it goes to court or whatever. So I'm surprised to hear that did you take a picture of the shirt or did you buy the shirt?
No. I will retract what I said earlier that I thought it was love is love. I don't think that was that shirt. I think it was one that said peace, love, Disney.
Okay.
But it still was rainbow, and it was still something that they started selling like the week before Pride.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that my ex bought a shirt. I don't see if he'll send me a picture.
Yeah.
Because I know that like when we went to Disney, when Drew was living in Orlando, and we went to Gay Days and did a bunch of the parks, that was one of the things we talked about is at that time, which is now like 3 years ago, we talked about this like the hidden messaging thing. Because I think what a lot of these businesses do is they're in business to make money. That's fine. But what's hard is social construct drives what they're willing to do.
Right.
So are they willing to have a t-shirt with a Pride image obviously in it? Or is it more kind of like subtext, like the rainbow pin stuff? When we went there, like, yeah, it's a rainbow pin. Well, if you pay close enough attention, it's either 5 of the 6 colors or seven colors, not 6. Like, so it's really super close. So it's almost like it's a head nod, but it's not exact and it's not official.
It's not like the official Pride thing.
Right. But at the same time, you're kind of like, I mean, we kind of chuckled about it a little bit. We're like, well, no one's fooling themselves. Like, no one thinks that there is not a gay employee at Disney. That's just not only statistically impossible, but it's like, girl, have you seen Prince Charming? Come on. So, I mean, it's like, and there's been rumors over years about which characters have a certain orientation or whatever. I think that's where they walk a fine line because they're trying to not like rock the boat, but then they'll do things like, a couple of years ago, I don't think it happened this year, whatever. Usually for Disney around Gay Days, there's this dust up that some conservative group has a hissy fit and they try to make a stink about it. And it usually comes back to the same thing. The company, being Disney, is kind of like they just stay radio silent. They don't really say anything. They don't agree either way or the other. Like they don't tell the conservative group, shut the hell up, you're out of line. But they also don't come out in the other direction and say, that
we were gays.
Right. We have, we also find an issue with this.
It's a little difficult to have any kind of protesters at Walt Disney World because of the way that the park grounds are set up. They're so large, and Disney kind of owns all of that. Well, they do own all of that property, but it's not like going to Disneyland where you're on a city street and you can exit or enter the park from a public street. It's not like that. It's impossible for anybody to enter the park from a public street.
Right. The acreage is so vast. In order to possibly protest, you are nowhere near where the people are.
Exactly.
Like you'd be a mile or 2 away, and even then, I don't know if Orlando has ordinances along like that kind of
because
stuff.
Because there's plenty of ways into Walt Disney World, but they're all via highways.
Interesting.
Yeah, like it's not like Universal. Some of the other parks, you kind of go through a commercial district or something to get into.
Universal is still on public streets. All of Walt Disney Worlds are private. They are all Disney streets.
I mean, think of it this way. Land the size of your dining room table. The park is like dead center and maybe where the laptop is. You know what I mean? Like there's so much
around
buffer.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy as to the still to this day, I'm curious about how they really did that. I'm sure it's in a documentary or in a book or something about how they used all these like pseudonym names to buy acres upon acres. I mean, just like tons of shit, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, by the way, these 50 businesses or whatever, I don't know what the number was, are really just one company, and they just basically bought up like 8% of the entire state or whatever. I'm probably way wrong about that, but.
So when Gay Days happens at...
Sorry, I was just going to say what we were just talking about. Drew piped in. He said their stance, meaning Disney, is we don't plan it. The groups plan it. We welcome everyone.
Yeah.
Because he worked there in the past. That was the other interesting thing to go when we did, was because Drew has been an employee there and been there during like Red Shirt Day and that kind of stuff. So we talked back then. By the way, if you go back to those episodes in COL history, there are 3 episodes back to back in the month of June, like 3-4 years ago when we did that road trip. And we talk about a lot of things. And one of the things we talk about is the history of Gay Days at Walt Disney World and how it's changed. Because when Drew worked there, he's like, it was massive. Like, it wasn't the beginning. It was, I don't want to say the height, but the turnout and the amount of red shirts was like impactful. Like, you couldn't miss it. And we talked about when we went then that not as many people know about the red shirt thing. Like, some people do, but now it was more kind of like what we did and you guys have done. It's like you have a shirt made, you know what I mean? And it's like, so now everyone's kind of got their own branding thing going on, but it's not so much about we need to be visual, you know what I mean? Like, to make this impact, it's just.
I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that it's more organized now and people tend to go for like a week-long event.
Well, right. I mean, that's the other thing that's changed is that now Gay Days in Orlando is 7, 8, like
7
9
days.
days. It's this whole legacy of different things. Almost every single day is a different park. I mean, granted, there's a lot of parks, but
on top of that, it used to just be you go to Magic Kingdom and that's it. Now it's you can go to Magic Kingdom or you can go to Universal Studios.
right. And that's the funny thing. Like, when we went there, so Gay Days Orlando is an entity event. And within that are the like different park days that they pick, but you don't have to go those days.
You don't have to go to Universal
And then you've
or
got
Magic Kingdom or to either of them.
right, and then
Do
you've
what you
got
want.
like Tidal Wave, which is another layer that's happening, which is a whole separate entity and group putting on a bear event. And so, is the bear run going to the same parks on the same days as Gay Days or not? Right. But we were trying to explain it when we went. It's like, no, you don't have to. The only thing we said officially we wanted to do was go to Kingdom on the day that pretty much everybody goes, because that's when you're probably going to have the most impact, like at least to be seen and the most folks to run into. But that's why that whole event and everything is so unique. But then you've got Cedar Point, which is a park, no offense, and Sandusky. It's not relative. They don't own a gazillion acres and have all these different, pieces of things to do. It's just one park one day. And some people did say to me recently, like, they should move it off for Father's Day. I'm like, well, hey, you know what? Like, I got nothing to do with that. Like, and if you really don't want that to be the thing, then I don't know who's in charge of that or makes that happen. But, part of me was like, we don't have to go that day.
I don't think anybody puts it together or sponsors it. I think it's just tradition has always set it as Father's Day. That's the day you go. That's the day people remember going.
Right. So, yeah, and that's kind of the I guess odd or unique thing about it is some people think, oh, well, there's someone in charge of that. No, not necessarily.
Who knows?
Yeah, you have different things. I mean, like in my hometown, we have the Walden Amusement Park. People have always said, oh, you should do like a Gay Day there. The past couple of years, they've started it, but it's very much I think it should be. It's baby steps. It's like the local pride organization works with the park, gets like the passes or whatever set up. They rent a pavilion. So, I mean, it's very much on a smaller scale. Could it become a bigger thing? Absolutely. But to just think that I'm going to take over a park, and all these people are going to show up and it's going to be, I'm like, oh yeah, no.
They're not going to allow that. They're not going to like that.
Well,
You're fucking with their business.
Not right. If you did it guerrilla style, and if you try to work with the park, like, where's your backup? Like, where's your proof that you're really going to sell 5,000 tickets or get that many people to show up or whatever?
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's difficult to plan that. Like people talk to me about my event like being bigger, and I try to tell them, I'm like, well, it can and it can't. When it comes to the water park event alone, absolutely, it could be way bigger because the park is so big. The capacity is huge. So yeah, we could have more bodies in the park, but we don't have the facilities to hold all those people outside of there.
Yeah.
So we'd have to do kind of like a TBRU or maybe a tidal wave or whatever, where you've got multiple like host locations, and that's a lot of work to like put that together. Right, especially if everyone has more expectations. That's the struggle I see with a lot of these events. Like even like putting on a park event.
Yeah.
Not everyone wants to ride rides.
Yep.
Not everyone wants to see the drag show.
Yep.
How do you find that balance of things? I mean, that's what we face as people, you know, kind of give us the feedback of, you know, well, I'm not a drinker. So no offense, I don't care about your beer tour or your wine tour. All right, that's fair. You know, but then it's like, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Yes.
Oh, it's cute.
Someone's sleeping on the couch. And they're a little loud. So the interesting thing is finding that balance. And what I tell people is like events like this, your audience is varied. So like my event, it's 21 to 81. And the income background, all of that stuff is so wide.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't know, like the floral, you know, shop owners of America conference,
Yeah.
you know, where it's a little more specific and you can kind of work with that, I guess, that demo a little bit, you know, harder or easier to build stuff. It's like, no, I've got people all over the place. And, you know, I want to bring up, because it's out there in the world now, there's a new event coming on the horizon next August that now I find it interesting. Part of this concept is World Bear Weekend in August in Kentucky is being organized and put together by the same individuals maybe that does NAB. It is not being done by an organization this time. But what Adam's trying to work on is, interestingly, he wants to bring together the bear and leather and pup communities into one event. And then they're also kind of recognizing, interestingly, the like kilt wearers aspect. So there's going to be contest titles to go with that stuff. And it's basically 6 months off of NAB. So in theory, my understanding is there was kind of a request, I don't know by who, to have like a summer or fall or, you know, an NAB 0.5 or, you know, whatever. Like people wanted it twice a year, I guess some people did. So it's an interesting balance, but what Adam's trying to do, what I find interesting is he's trying to bring together various aspects of the community that do their own things into one event. And I don't know, I'll be curious to see how it plays out, but he decided to announce it 1 year in advance. Hey, this is a thing. It is actually booked. It is planned. Like you can start doing this stuff and that kind of thing. So I'll be curious to see how that goes. I'm optimistic, but I'll be honest, I'm kind of like this, because part of me is like, do we need another event? And what's unique about this event? Like, why do people want to go to this event other than people are going to be there? But then like a conversation I have this morning, some people say, why are you still going to X event? That event hasn't changed in this many years. It's kind of boring. And the answer is, oh, but my friends go. So, you know what I mean? It's like, but I think that could be said about a lot of events. Like I've never been to Tidal Wave, but I think some people that have gone for a good number of years might have the same opinion. Like, so what? It's in a hotel. It's full of pool parties and dances. Woo! You know,
every year I've gone to Tidal Wave, I've done something different with it. It's never been the same. What the event entails has not changed, except for this past year was the drag show.
Right.
Other than that, what I put in and get out of it has changed every single year that I go.
And that's the
But
way.
that's the difference, though. You're a self-starter who will create things, and that's the balance. Like I talk about with my event, that's hard because like Drew and I, we're best friends, and he joined the committee this past year. We talk now internally about there are people who will be self-starters, I call them. Like, they will come up with things to do if the event listing doesn't appease them, or they've come enough times, they're like, meh, okay, whatever. Then you've got other people that are like, they're not that way, and they want to be, not spoon-fed, but they kind of want their hand held, like, go to this and do this thing, and blah, blah, blah. And that's the challenge, because especially when you have a lot of people who put on an event, who are the self-starters, the go-getters, they kind of have a difficult time recognizing what it's like to be a person that doesn't have the creativity or the imagination or the skills to just invent things to do.
I've seen many bar events do not bar events, bear runs and whatever. They do these things where they actually plan quote unquote free time.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, oh, you can do whatever you want. Like, we're not planning anything. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to, if you want to go do something, like, the city is that way, and there's, these things over here. Here's some options, but do whatever you want. You've got some hours to do whatever the fuck you want. And I remember those times because I really just, like, I told myself, like, what would I do? And I thought for a second, and I realized, well, I don't really want to go do because I think it was Nashville. We had just done a tour, kind of like the Grand Ole Opry area.
Mm-hmm.
But like, we really don't need to do much else besides that reality. And then it was like, well, what else could I do? Well, I can't think of anything. So we went back to the room and we took a nap. Like, we're gonna sleep for a little bit so that we can have the energy to do the stuff that was planned later on in the day. It's that easy sometimes. Or if you don't want to do something, or if there's nothing available for you to do, sometimes you just pick your phone and get on the growler or walk around the halls and see what you pick up.
Right. And I think that's the challenge is people knowing that your time is always your own. Like, you don't have to do things that are listed, even if you paid into it. You know what I mean? Like, if you paid extra for a thing, you don't have to do that. Now, as an organizer, I will say this. If you're going to back out of a commitment on something and they're kind of planning on you being there, like as a head count or anything, just let them know. Yeah. Like, just, you don't have to blast it, and Lord knows it doesn't need to be a growler shout. You just, just kind of give a heads up, and be like, it's easier, obviously, if you know the staff or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of hard because I've never been to an event like this. I still don't understand this. People talk to me and they're like, oh, your event's so laid back because, like, you don't require people to do things.
Nobody's requiring you to do anything.
What event required? I'm so confused with this concept. I've never been to an event where it's like you feel that you are mandatory to go to something.
No event does that.
I'm
no event even
serious.
says it's mandatory you even show up. They don't give a shit. You paid your ticket.
Yeah.
So show up.
So none of us can relate to that. I'm still on the hunt. Anybody out there that's hearing or listening to the show, if you've had an experience that you went to something and you felt that you were pressured or it was mandatory to go to something, please let me know, because I'd like to understand this better. Because I don't see how that happens. If it does happen, I'm like, well, first of all, it's rude.
Yeah.
And second of all, I'm like, no offense, you didn't sign up for the armed forces. Like, that's not how this works. I didn't contract my life away to be told what to do, and when to do it. So I'm get confused about this idea.
You must go to the bear contest.
This last Midwest Bear Fest, you just said a few moments ago, if you sign up for something, tell them that you're not attending. At Midwest Bear Fest during the most huggable contest, they said they had like 27 people sign up that were going to be competing. And then when we all show up, there's only like 6 of us. And I felt very weird about that.
Right. And I will admit that's a little dicey when you ask people to sign up as a commitment for something and then they don't turn out.
Yeah.
But my experience is you should plan for that.
Yeah.
You should just expect, one, shit's gonna happen. So you don't know, like they might have left and had to go home for an emergency. Maybe they drank and partied way too much, and that's why you haven't seen them for half the weekend. Because they're basically in a bed, wishing they were in a hole in the ground or something, trying to recover. I don't know.
Yeah. Or they got sick or ill or what have you. Or
Maybe they just changed their priority.
Yeah.
And they were kind of like, oh, there's a naked party in room such and such. I'm going to be there. You know, I mean, who knows what happens.
I met somebody and we're now
In a bathroom stall. Right.
People like myself who get a hold of their friends and say, hey, at 2:00 they've got such going on. That sounds boring. Let's go do something else together as a group.
Right.
And that thing takes you away and you know when they're available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I contact the people the next year and say, by the way, my group went and did this and we had way more fun than whatever bullshit thing you had scheduled. So you might want to consider adding that to your roster.
I'm kind of. I'm like, well, I'm kind of hoping you're a little more eloquent about that, as opposed to being so direct. But you do you, babe.
I'm just like, let me just call somebody. And talk.
Drew just called that shady.
It was shady.
No,
I didn't actually tell it to them like that, but
I didn't think you did. But I think that's fair, though. I think that's what people should do. I think people should make, suggestions or recommendations based off of things like, hey, while I was at your event, I went out in the city and I did this thing and it was a lot of fun. You should consider doing it, or adding it or whatever.
Totally.
I mean, that's how it happened with us. Hey, Evan.
hey,
Good
morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
That's snoring.
Yeah. So,
It's okay.
Have fun.
we were looking at things to do with our event, and so we added an escape room. We weren't originators. It had been done at other run events, but it was newer to my city, and I checked it out, and we did it, and it was a hit. From what I know, nearly 100% of the people that went and did it, they had fun, they enjoyed it, so we're making plans to bring it back again, but that's kind of how that stuff happens. They're
Okay.
stuck in the backyard, and the neighbor is getting hosed. There's a story behind that, apparently. I don't know who that is.
Anyway, but just
Sorry,
I think overall,
we're reading our chat messages.
overall, I think most like things like Pride Night and what like events and everything else, like anything else, we've talked about this many times. It is what you make of it.
Yeah.
There's
I don't know how many times I have to repeat this phrase that it's not the organizer's responsibility to ensure you have fun. They just need to provide a space for you to have fun. It's your responsibility to bring it.
Yeah, like for Pride Night, for example, I normally don't go to just ride rides. I like riding rides, but I don't always go. I like to see friends. I like to see, occasionally do some things, and I like going out, out and seeing all the people, seeing what's going on, seeing what's new and exciting, whatever. This year, due to traffic issues, we got there a little late, and like what happened with Gary was that we ended up basically sitting down and waiting for the drag show to start. Now, my original intention, which is kind of what I ended up doing on my own, was we're going to sit for the drag show for a little while, watch the first set, and then we're going to bolt and go Rise of Rise and maybe come back.
Mm-hmm.
That was my original plan. Jim wasn't feeling 100%. He works at the park, by the way, and he was there all day.
Mm-hmm.
And he's there now, and he was there yesterday. So, when he was like, I'm just going to kind of sit here and because it's good to sit and do stuff. I was like, okay, well, I know what's going on there. So I excused myself from the table,
Mm-hmm.
and I left. And I went and rode a few rides because I wanted to ride some rides. And friends of ours who helped bring me there left the table pretty much immediately after they ate.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go ride rides. And well, one of them ride rides, and one of them was just his boyfriend and kind of was there.
Right.
So, it all depends on what you want to make of it. The fact that the park was pretty much vacant except for us adds a little bit of a good factor where you'll get a chance to ride rides not just once, but maybe 3 or 4 times. I know friends that rode Mystic Timbers 4 or 5 times.
I know people that rode Diamondback 8 times in a row.
Yeah. Fuck that shit.
How they were upright at the end of the night is beyond me because I'm thinking your equilibrium would have been fucked. But if that's what you love to do, then I miss seeing some people because I was in the hall nearly the whole night because we got there and a lot of us needed to eat dinner. So we went where the food is. And, you know, we wanted to sit down inside as opposed to like a walk-up concession or something outside. So we went, we got food, we sat down, we ate, and no sooner than we finished eating, it was going on 8. And then we found out the show's supposed to start in half an hour. Well, no offense, I don't want to try to leave to go to a ride and make it back in time. And we noticed that the hall was halfway filled.
Yeah, it was getting full.
And I was like, well, shit. Like, if we leave, I have a feeling we're not going to be able to get a seat, or it's going to be standing room only, which it was, at least for probably the first set.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we've already talked about this. They, you know, a lot of people spilled out and left. And I'm always kind of surprised by this because I'm like, if I'm there to see the show, unless the show's shitty, I usually stay to the end. But I get that, like, you know, people were talking about the time frame, and someone had said to me, maybe they could open the park earlier, like extended by an hour, you know, if it returns as an event to make it easier. And I was like, well, what we don't know is there's a lot of factors. Like, part of it could be when the public hours end versus the private hours start. Usually they're not back to back. Like my event, they want a 60-minute buffer, right, to basically, no offense, clear out the public, reset or whatever, and then, you know, get the other group that's in.
I would have a hard time trying, you know, if I did make it to Pride Night, I would have a difficult time of deciding, do I want to watch drag queens or do I want to go on roller coasters? Because both of them to me are pretty important.
Okay, no less dose. You can probably potentially do both. I think the event is open long enough to where you can potentially do everything. Most things, the event goes from 6 till midnight, so you have 6 hours
to ride,
to ride rides, to eat dinner, to socialize with friends.
Oh yeah, in that case, I would have prioritized and been like, I'm gonna eat a hot dog on my way to this roller coaster.
Yeah. So, but a lot of it is about timing piece. Like, in order to take advantage of that, if you want to do it right, let's say they repeat it again next year, no time change stuff. You have to probably get there at 5 o'clock to be ready, because the gates open at 5, to get into the park about 5:30. And then I don't know if the food stuff starts at 6 or if it's available 5 o'clock hour.
They probably have it available right around the time the park opens.
If they have it available around 5 o'clock, you could jump that piece ahead and start eating soon, you know, and then at least put a little something in your stomach if you have to, although you're about to ride, so.
Yeah.
And then if you know that the show is going to start at, like, say 8:30 or 8 o'clock, then you can decide, all right, I've got till 7:30 to, like, get certain things, you know, off my list or whatever. And then
you said there's only like 3,400 people there, then you have no problem getting on rides.
Yeah, certain rides.
You're talking unless 10-minute wait for things.
Unless the ride's like super, like Mystic Timbers, I was a little surprised that so many people made it on it because it's the newest ride at the park.
Right.
And like Banshee last year or 2 years ago, when the last time I went was 2 years ago. Banshee was the newest ride then, and it didn't have I never saw, like, outside of the, like, event,
the proper
area.
Yeah.
I didn't see, like, lines out the door, but I know that there were lines. But again, they're going pretty quickly, and they're also you're aware that the lines are going to be shorter. So people are kind of like, oh, well, you'll plan, you'll prioritize, you'll do what you do.
So I think that what it really comes down to is planning. You have to think ahead. So then the thing is, the show is basically a 2-hour commitment. It started at 8:30, it wrapped up about 10:30, and the park closes at midnight. Now, if you decide to do the photography,
you still got time left.
If you decide to do the photo op, then you have to go get in the big ass line, which the photography is free. You don't have to pay to have your picture taken. You know, they have a guy they hire as a professional. They have the step and repeat backdrop with us, like, Kings Island 1,000 times in the background. Plug. You know, and then they take the pictures, which each picture takes 2 minutes, you know, minute and a half, whatever, get in, pose, blah, and then you keep moving on. They don't charge, although they do say, we would like a donation. It goes to the center, you know, blah, blah, blah. So you do that. So, you know, like, we weren't wrapping up in there and saying goodbye to one of the performers until close to 11:15. And then by then it's like, well, the park's about to close. So it's like, well, what do you want to do? You know, so some of us, we went and got ice cream or whatever, and just kind of hung around and bullshit. So, you know, no Jenny's there. So yeah, it was like, like, so in a way, I know some people were like, you know, I can't believe I spent that much money for whatever. So I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I spent basically $40 to go see a 2-hour long drag show, which had 2 RuPaul performers in it.
$20 an hour.
Right, and I saw the 2 RuPaul performers do 4 songs each. So like when we break it down and we do the numbers, we said what it was like 20 numbers in 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's not a lot. Like, I mean, like because they did keep it moving. So it's not like a lot of bars, I feel, where this is the drag show that never ends.
I talked to Evan about this before. I'm like, when you go to an escape room, it's $30 off the bat.
Yeah.
You are basically paying $30 an hour for entertainment. It is no different than going to a Broadway show where they're paying $60, $65 for a ticket for your seat.
Mm-hmm.
The show is 2 hours, $30 an hour. What you have to ask yourself is, how much is my time worth, and what am I willing to spend for entertainment?
The thing I do was like everything I loved. It was it's on What Not to Wear, that TV show that was on there. And one of the things they always talk about is like cost per wear. Like, why would you spend like $100 or $200 on a shirt? Well, you realize that you're not just wearing it that one, unless you're wearing it that one time.
Right.
Yeah, you're wearing it for like oh, you have XYZ event, so you can maybe wear it then, or you have a function that you maybe go to every year, so you have something that you could potentially use either multiple times or whatever. So the cost per wear goes down the multiple times you wear it, or you potentially could wear it. So where that $100 shirt might be, if you wear it once, oh my God, what the fuck? But if you realize you wear it maybe 5 times before you can't wear it anymore, that's $20 per wear.
People complain that the prices for Disney World are $100 a day per ticket. And I'm like, the park's open for like 16 hours. Yeah. I don't think it's 16 hours.
But it's
open for like 12 hours. That's like $9 an hour for you to be in the park.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that much.
It's hard. I think it's hard.
But right, I mean, I think the cost, like I do more work on training development, cost is about value, and people have to have the value perception, whether or not it's in there for them. Like we teach on this concept, like what's in it for me? We call them WIFMs. Like the only reason why someone invests in something or does something is because it has a payoff.
Back.
Right. I mean, think of it this way. It's no different than like you were talking about a tire. Let's talk about leather. We were just having this conversation earlier, in the past day about like certain, purveyors, some people think are expensive. Well, that's probably because customers or potential customers think there's not enough value in that price point for the product that I'm getting.
Right.
And then, so some people are willing to have a different purveyor or knockoff leather or, I mean, there's all sorts of things. So I think that's the balance of what happens. I had to learn that early on when I worked for the campground resort. At the time it was a campground, but the owner said, I was surprised to see what the overnight stay price was, like for the bed and breakfast part, because it was hovering around $100 a night. And I was like, dang, like that's way more than a hotel room. But then again, I'm a cheap bitch. Like, and so the owner was like, okay, first of all, like, it's not just a room. Like that room is where you're staying. And yes, you have your own bath or shared bath or whatever the arrangement is, but you also have breakfast in the morning. And that, covers, like 2 people or whatever. And on top of that, you now have the entire property like at your disposal. So you don't have to spend more money to go walk the trails, go, around, the area, to go to the dance hall,
or $30 on breakfast in the morning when you guys get up.
Right. So I mean, it's like and then the most interesting thing that he said, and I never forget that Daniel kind of taught me this lesson. He says, and it's not my issue whether or not you can afford it. I'm a business. It is up to you to decide whether or not you want to do this thing. Right. And I kind of understand that. I've never applied that theory to the event that I put on, but it's similar.
Yeah.
Some people might think that, like, I've been told in the past, like $100 is the breaking point that someone will spend on an event. Now, granted, that was like probably 8 years ago, but at this point, I'm kind of like, whoa, you're really kind of cutting yourself out of a lot of things these days because price keeps going up. But it's fine. Everyone has their own like kind of breaking point. Like, I will not invest any more in this. I mean, look, you buy a new computer. It's like, how much do you want to spend? Do you want to spend this? Do you want to spend that?
Yeah.
Like we were talking at the dinner a little bit with friends of yours. Like one of them is thinking about switching from like a MacBook to an iPad or whatever, because pretty much everything he does is online. And I told him, I was like, yeah, then an iPad makes more sense. If you don't need to have a literal hard drive to get things to do certain stuff, and you don't care about the touchscreen style navigation, yeah, you go for the iPad, go for the tablet thing. But some people are kind of like, oh, but Apple products are expensive. Well, people that like the product will spend the money for the thing. You don't have to. So I feel that way about a lot of stuff. You're either going to spend the investment or you're not, and you just kind of go from there.
And then again, it's also what you put into it. I can't stress that enough.
Mm-hmm.
Any event, anything like that is all about what you put into it. Because you can't just, like you were saying, you can't just expect all this stuff to be here and you're going to have a good time.
Right.
Like, you could have all this shit all around you, like, we're going to do this and we're having this and we're going to do this. If you don't engage in any way, shape, or form, then if you don't even go, yeah.
That's why I have issues when people say, oh, I went to X event and I didn't have a good time. That's not X event's problem, that's yours.
I
Take that for face value, because
Right.
yes, I know that
I
something
agree,
might
but
happen.
I agree, but I don't agree. Because no offense, you can go to a shitty event.
You can.
We could have gone to the brewery yesterday and been like, wow, this is a real poop show. Like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
not only, like, I don't care how great the beer is. If the building isn't clean, the staff's not nice, like, the event's kind of cruddy, like, people are rude, absolutely. I'd be like, I will go buy it in the store maybe if I want to give you my money.
Yeah.
Like, outside of that, no interest. So that's why I'm like, I kind of agree. Like, how I feel about this. I've always said, you are responsible for your own stuff.
Right.
I can't be held accountable for your whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can only be accountable to what I'm like a part of. So yes, like, and that's one of the weird things. Like, sometimes events are held accountable for vendors. And that gets sticky because while yes, the event booked the vendor or contracted the vendor or allowed the vendor to come, the event host is not running the vendor's business. So if you don't like their approach, their style, how they handle things, you can go to said host or whatever and provide some criticism constructively or complain. Yeah, but you have to realize they're not in charge.
Yeah.
Unless they do also run the business. Like, that to me is like, so if you come and say that, blah, 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 like, I don't care how they operate. It's like, oh, all right. Like someone came once and was like, it was an actual event, I'll leave their name out, but they were like, this, I don't care for this business. They didn't give me a receipt. Okay, what do you want me to do about it? They're like, well, I think that you should be able to do something. All right, I can go talk to them, but the fact that they don't do receipts at all does not magically mean I'm going to be able to get you a receipt. Like, and they're like, well, I don't know if they're going to make the thing that it was something custom. And I said, well, if you're concerned that you're never going to get it and that you're kind of get ripped off, then just get your money back. I was like, just go ask them, tell them you're going to cancel the order and get money back. Like, I'm like, it was so weird to me. I was like, why are you, I'm not in charge of everything. And while you might think I'm an authority figure and I can help you with this, I can try a little, but I was just like, I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, there's certain amounts of responsibility and then there's not. I mean, it's kind of weird. It's like, so you say you go to a hotel and you stay there and I don't know, the toilet paper is not up to standard. You can hold the hotel accountable to a certain point, but the hotel didn't make the toilet paper. Do you know what I mean? They contracted it, they have it. Leave Disney out of this. Or whoever you're thinking.
No, I was just going to say, I think that the hotel can be accountable in that instance because they are the ones who chose that particular toilet paper.
Right, but that's where I think it stops, though. That's what I'm trying to say is like their responsibility is only because they made that decision, but they didn't ultimately make the thing.
Right.
Like I think that's where people kind of get a little odd about where they see things lining up. They think, oh, because you did this, you're absolutely responsible, or you should step up or whatever. And I'm kind of like, no, like not everybody is a Disney where like they practically do every aspect of anything, which isn't true. To ride into Disney from the parking lot into the park, Disney may maintain those vehicles, but Disney didn't build those vehicles. Right. They didn't make the rubber tires. You know what I mean? It's just, and that's where I'm kind of like, I don't know why people sometimes feel that Well, it kind of goes back to my earlier statement. I realize I've been on the soapbox. It's about whether or not people have relative awareness.
Yeah.
Like I've always said this for years. If you have only ever worked for businesses and not been a person who helps make the business happen, then it's very different. Like I've worked for both large corporations and mom and pop operations. When you work on a small scale to like, sole proprietorship or whatever, it's very easy to implement change. There's no chain of command, a big book, you don't need someone to review it. You don't need a compliance department. You just
walk up and say, hey, we're changing this to this.
Right, and it goes so much
Done.
quicker and faster. But when you have a smaller entity, it's so much easier to be able to do stuff.
Yeah.
But the larger it is, the more people, more complex. But that's what I think people understand. Like I hate saying it, but like if you're just a cog in the machine and you just do your little piece and you don't know what it takes to make all the stuff happen, then I think that's where those voices come from. They just, I don't want to call them ignorant. I think their awareness is just limited to what it is. It's like if I was to critique Chester about photography, I feel he has every right to come back to me and be like, and what do you know about photography? Like, not to be a dick about it, but you're just kind of like, well, do you know anything? Like, do you understand light, composition, f-stop, blah, blah, blah? I'm just throwing out words because I don't know what I'm talking about. But the reality is, if you don't know those things. Oh, I thought f-stop was about fist fucking. Anyway.
Stop.
Spoiler.
Wait, what?
3.
One is a stop? I don't. Who has a slot? I don't understand this. I
Because I was
understand
putting my fingers out like 3.
F3, F4. That's what he was.
really. Oh, wait. So this is f stop.
Anyway.
And for anybody who's like watching the video, they just completely like, wow, that was like right turn at Albuquerque Looney Tunes moment. Like we're talking about photography and suddenly we were talking about fist fucking. There you go.
All right.
So that being said, I think we're going to wrap up the show and that way, despite all the technical difficulties in starting it in the very beginning. So we apologize about that. When we're on the road, we're using different equipment and different setups, so that becomes
once in a while it becomes a bit of a cluster.
it
It's
becomes
okay. We're good
a
now.
thing. So because we're on the road, we don't have our closing topic stuff. There's no Tumblr or links or any of that kind of thing. We'll resume that for our next show. That being said, are we ready to run through the drill?
Sure.
That kind of wraps things up so we don't get yelled at. If you would like to get in touch with us or watch other episodes or antics or listen to things, you can go to cubsoutloud.com. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach out literally, physically, in presence and touch us. Get consent first, or you can send us an email. It's cubsoutloud@gmail.com. If you are on the socials, you can go to facebook.com/cubsoutloud, twitter.com/cubsoutloud, Google Plus is google.com/+cubsoutloud. You can go to Bear Underground, the official Bear social website community. For that, you can also rank us on your various podcast applications. You can go to iTunes and rate us. You can leave a feedback comment. We appreciate it. Stitcher Radio, you can give us a thumbs up. If you want to get in touch with any of us, those of us that are here presently, I'll run through first. I'm Garebear73 online. That's GARBEAR73.
You can find me as TheaterCup79 on Bear Underground, Growler, Tumblr, Net, etc. Or you can find me as pup_umber on Twitter.
You can find me on Tumblr or Twitter under the name of the pup up there. Or the back rooms of beer brew houses being fruity and bitter.
Oh,
Or various beer
Insider.
sites across the net under the name Pup Shutter Cupcake 76. Do you know how long that's been in my head?
Oh, wow, I take it.
Since yesterday,
So real
apparently.
quick, why don't you tell them why I said that?
All right, before we sign off, yesterday we went to the beer place for the beer tour, and there was a beer actually named Chester. And so most places you can get a taste, which is like a half ounce or an ounce of volume, and you can taste whatever it is before you decide to purchase like a pint or whatever. So I'm standing at the bar, Chester's to my right, and I said to the young lady, the bartender, I said, can I try the Chester? And she said, sure. She delivers it, and she hands it to me, and this one says, oh, you're going to taste me?
To be fair, I leaned right up into you as you get it right to your lips. And that's when I said it.
So to Chester, it was a private comment of snark to me, which may have had some like ulterior motives on like the brown chicken, brown cow side. I'm not really sure. Point is, then I taste it, and then I was like, oh, it is just like you. It's fruity and bitter. Damn. Boom! But I say that out loud, so everybody around me hears it. Drew hears it. The female bartender hears it. Chester hears it, and yeah. So
Yeah, it was quite funny.
that's what that shady dig was now. Just in our closing comments.
All right. Well, with that,
Yeah. So I guess that's it.
yeah, that's everything.
Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good. Good night, Evan.
Have a good one, y'all.
You already been sleeping.
Boop, boop, boop.